And I would love to introduce Alex, who is our general manager in Brazil, and who will lead the talk. And afterwards, Juan will give a little bit of an explanation, a follow-up to what Alex will say. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Obrigado. Inácio. Silvana, obrigado pelo convite, obrigado ao Instituto Connect. Eu vou fazer, naturalmente, essa primeira parte em português, acho que vai ser de maior benefício para todos, e vamos utilizando aqui o conhecimento do Inácio e do Juan para ir ajudando a gente a ilustrar essa nossa rápida apresentação e esse debate. Eu queria começar, se vocês me permitem, antes da gente começar a falar dos slides, passar um clipe de 1 minutinho sobre a Globant, por favor.
From time to time, we need to reinvent ourselves. Today, more than ever, we need to grow and adapt as people and as brands. At Globant, we go beyond our peers to help organizations embrace a new reality. We are reinventing digital. Millions of people are impacted by the solutions we create, with products built by blending engineering, design, and innovation at scale. With our studios, deep pockets of expertise focused on the latest technologies and trends. Our reinvention starts with each of our Globers. Our global team is multi-talented, multicultural, and extremely passionate. In this new world, we reinvent collaboration.
All right.
Don't you worry.
Through technology. We rely on autonomy and organize ourselves into agile pods. We provide transformation that goes beyond digital. We embrace the power of artificial intelligence to augment Globant's capabilities and promote culture. With the help of AI, we are revolutionizing the way we recruit and retain our talent, the way we code and collaborate. It's a matter of following a vision, a dream. We are reinventing digital so you can reinvent your business. Globant, we are ready.
Obrigado, Juan.
Time to time, we need to reinvent ourselves.
Vamos para a próxima lâmina, por favor. Bom, deixa eu falar um pouquinho mais da Globant para vocês e contar um pouco da nossa história. Bom, somos uma empresa global, nascemos na Argentina no início desse século, portanto já chegamos com o nosso DNA digital, estamos aí completando 18 anos, e sempre com a ideia de, como a gente colocou no vídeo, né, de transformar, de resolver problemas do dia a dia com tecnologia de vanguarda, na verdade, buscar novas soluções, novas realidades. Aqui embaixo a gente traz uma linha do tempo que eu gostaria de destacar alguns pontos sobre a nossa história. Um ponto fundamental, 3 anos depois do nosso nascimento, que eu diria que mudou o nosso destino, foi o contrato com a Google. Fomos o primeiro parceiro selecionado pela Google e que, a propósito, é hoje ainda nosso parceiro e nosso cliente, e passamos desde 2006, portanto, a estar envolvidos em projetos dentro do Vale do Silício com tecnologias de vanguarda. Isso foi uma mudança fundamental e está na nossa cultura, no nosso DNA. Enfim, vamos andando, a companhia vai crescendo, vai se expandindo, até que em 2014 abrimos o nosso capital na Bolsa de Nova York. Naquele instante, naquele momento, nossas ações estavam com um valor de $10, hoje elas estão em $220. Portanto, desde então, desde o momento em que nós abrimos nosso capital até hoje, temos sólida e consistência performance, com nosso incremento de revenue anual em média, acima de 25%. Então, é uma história de crescimento, é uma história que vai se expandindo. Hoje temos mais de 17 mil pessoas trabalhando em vários países e, incrivelmente, viramos casos de estudo até. São casos de estudos públicos. Se você quiser, você encontra casos de estudo sobre a Globant feito pelo MIT, por Stanford, por Harvard, ou seja, chamamos a atenção e estamos aí sempre muito voltados para essa utilização de tecnologia para resolver problemas do dia a dia das empresas de uma maneira geral. Vamos lá, Juan, o que mais? Bom, em termos geográficos, apenas para que vocês possam ter uma ideia, estamos com mais de 50 escritórios, com presenças nas Américas, na Europa e agora expandindo mais fortemente para a Ásia. E a seleção desses escritórios, muitas vezes, elas têm o grande vetor que é buscar o talento. Aonde está o talento? Naturalmente, aonde está o business, mas, sobretudo, aonde está o talento. E como a gente percebe claramente durante essa fase de pandemia, o ritmo de demanda por talentos está muito maior. As empresas estão demandando muito mais serviços tecnológicos. Então, por sorte, estamos localizados em polos onde temos acesso a talentos, a universidades, a organismos que nos ajudam a oferecer essa mão de obra especializada que é fundamental no nosso negócio.
Alex, por ahí decir que hoy estamos creciendo. Es tal la disrupción que la pandemia hizo en lo digital, que hoy estamos creciendo, estamos tomando 1.000 personas por mes en los últimos 5 o 6 meses. Tanto Estados Unidos como Latinoamérica, y en particular Brasil, están creciendo mucho.
Perfeito, Nacho. Bom, nós temos acho que essa missão de transformar essa indústria de serviços profissionais e temos 3 diferenciadores que gostaria de destacar aqui para vocês. O primeiro deles é a forma com que nós nos organizamos internamente. Nós nos organizamos pelo que chamamos de estúdios, ou seja, são células, são organismos onde ali tem o talento ao redor os talentos ao redor, por exemplo, de temas tecnológicos ou ao redor de alguns temas importantes. Então, por exemplo, temos estúdios com especialistas em marketing digital, ou em cloud, ou em gaming, não é? Ou em experiência do cliente, ou ainda um estúdio mais recente que trata do tema de sustentabilidade, um tema especialmente contemporâneo, onde incorporamos tecnologia com o conceito de sustentabilidade para ajudar nossos clientes a mapearem, por exemplo, a emissão de CO2 nos seus processos, em todas as cadeias dos seus processos, e desenhar um plano de como neutralizar ou reduzir essas emissões. Então, temas importantes, onde a tecnologia pode estar envolvida, nós temos estúdios dedicados com as melhores práticas e os melhores talentos. Essa é a parte, digamos, um primeiro diferenciador dentro de casa. Um segundo, que é esse triângulozinho de cabeça para baixo, são exatamente as nossas equipes que estão nos clientes. Então, essas equipes, elas são equipes ágeis, equipes autogeridas, elas são multidisciplinares e elas são montadas indo nos estúdios e pensando, buscando, selecionando os profissionais com os conhecimentos necessários especificamente para aquela dor ou aquela prioridade dos nossos clientes. Então, um exemplo prático é para o nosso cliente jornal Estadão, Estado de São Paulo, temos uma equipe composta de especialistas em cultura organizacional, ao mesmo tempo especialistas em experiência do cliente, obviamente alguns desenvolvedores de software, agile coaches para projetos ágeis, ou seja, absolutamente multidisciplinar, que foi montada para atender especificamente aquele cliente. E um terceiro diferenciador importante para destacar é que, na nossa visão, temos sempre que possível vamos sempre incorporando a inteligência artificial no que nós executamos. Então, no que nós fazemos. Então, por exemplo, nosso grupo, que é grandemente formado por desenvolvedores, por exemplo, desenvolvedores de software, utilizamos inteligência artificial para acelerar o desenvolvimento desse software, para buscar mais qualidade, onde o desenvolvedor de software, em linguagem natural, consegue interagir com essa inteligência artificial para buscar parte desse código que ele vai precisar para o seu software, e esse código já chega testado, porque ele já está utilizado e já está disponível em algum tipo de biblioteca. Então, é um processo de inteligência artificial que a gente usa no nosso próprio dia a dia. Um outro ponto, conforme disse o Nátio, para dar, digamos, capacidade de recrutar tantas pessoas mensalmente, utilizamos também inteligência artificial no processo de recruiting, não é? Obviamente que é mais um insight para o grupo de pessoas ou de gestores que está buscando selecionar profissionais, mas que a inteligência artificial busca identificar um pouco das reações daquele candidato diante de algumas questões mais ou menos espinhosas e consegue se identificar, por exemplo, o fit cultural, o fit organizacional, que é aquele perfil do candidato.
Alex,
pois não, Nath?
Ahí lo que hacemos es tomamos de la gente que duró, que estuvo mucho tiempo en la empresa, tomamos los datos de quiénes son los que mejor performaron en la empresa, entonces los ponemos dentro de una base de datos y comparamos como un punto de comparación a toda la gente que estamos entrevistando para entrar en la empresa, como una forma de ver si tienen el fit o no tienen el fit, pero solo uno de los elementos. Después son entrevistas y otras cosas. Pero es utilizar inteligencia artificial en cuanto a quiénes anduvieron dentro de la empresa y cómo poder compararlos con aquellos que yo estoy trayendo para entrevistar.
Perfeito, Nacho. Bom, avançando aqui, é importante falar um pouco também do que nós fazemos de maneira prática, ou seja, trabalhamos para múltiplas indústrias, para múltiplos clientes de diversos tamanhos. Então, nós não estamos organizados internamente, como tradicionais empresas estão, nós não estamos organizados por indústria ou por setores, porque acreditamos num tema fundamental que chamamos de cross-polinização, que é mais ou menos utilizar conhecimento e soluções de uma determinada indústria em outra indústria. E isso se passa de uma forma muito natural. A tecnologia alterou fortemente, e na outra sala de debate estávamos falando sobre isso, a tecnologia alterou fortemente, digamos, as fronteiras entre os segmentos, entre as indústrias. Portanto, mais do que comum termos uma solução, uma tecnologia, uma ideia numa indústria que é aplicável em outra. Então, uma solução conversacional, por exemplo, que tivemos com o Banco Santander, utilizando a plataforma WhatsApp, estamos desenvolvendo para a seguradora Porto Seguro, por exemplo. Então, são questões que são recorrentes, soluções que a tecnologia nos permite aproximar, por exemplo, uma determinada marca do seu consumidor no varejo e podemos utilizar a mesma coisa na área de saúde. Portanto, essa é uma questão muito importante e essa estrutura da Globant, essa visão da Globant, essa organização da Globant que a gente chamou de cross-polinização, que nos permite levar e trazer essas inovações de um cliente para outro em indústrias que a gente nem imaginava. Então, esse é um ponto muito importante. Separamos alguns casos, e vou fazer aqui um comentário rápido. Por exemplo, um caso que é da Disney, que é uma marca, que é um cliente que todos nós conhecemos, é um cliente da Globant há mais de 10 anos. E só para situar vocês, todo mundo sabe que a Disney tem uma experiência no parque física de 4 ou 5 dias espetacular. E ela, quando nos procurou anos atrás, ela queria mudar, ela queria expandir. Eu não quero apenas interagir com o meu cliente 4 ou 5 dias, eu quero estar em contato com ele 6, 7 meses, ou seja, desde o planejamento da viagem, na hora que você está pensando em fazer as reservas, na hora que você está adquirindo os seus ingressos. Então, a Globant desenvolveu uma parte de um aplicativo que oferece esse início da interação com a Disney muitos meses antes, e a partir dessas interações começamos a capturar os gostos deste cliente, qual a princesa da Disney que seu filho gosta, sua filha gosta, etc. E até o momento que você se aproxima e chega no parque. Aí tivemos uma outra inovação, que também conhecida como Magic Band, que é aquela pulseirinha, e é uma pulseirinha que te permite entrar no parque sem tocar em nada, pagar as suas compras dentro do parque, abrir a porta do seu quarto do hotel, mas, sobretudo, ajuda também a monitorar o movimento do parque. Então, com muita inteligência e muito software por trás, por exemplo, se identificamos que uma determinada parte do parque está com fila ou está muito cheio, automaticamente, por exemplo, fazemos uma promoção de hot dog ali perto e a fila se dissipa, ou você passeando com a sua filha e como uma história assim de mágica, ela é apresentada àquela princesa que a gente sabe, que o software sabe que é a princesa da vida dela, do sonho dela. Então, tudo isso é possível através da tecnologia, e a ideia da Disney de ser não apenas 4, 5 dias fisicamente contigo, mas, sobretudo, expandir essa relação e a tecnologia ajudando a fazer esse engajamento, não é? Então, essa é uma história, por exemplo, onde a tecnologia traz muito essa ideia da inovação. E nós utilizamos, por exemplo, essa própria tecnologia do Magic Band, desta pulseira, para uma empresa de petróleo chamada YPF, que podemos dizer assim grosseiramente que seria a Petrobras da Argentina, onde essa mesma tecnologia está no pulso do frentista, que ele libera a bomba, o nome dele aparece ali na bomba, ele pode interagir com o cliente pode dar a nota do atendimento, ou seja, você vê aí um caso, mais um caso onde uma solução numa indústria se aplica a outras indústrias. Então, eu acho, Juan, que a gente tem aí mais um videozinho que a gente pode passar, né, de um outro caso.
De la policía de Londres.
What we set out to do was to create a digital police station that was accessible to all Londoners. Now the key online services are the ability to report crime and incidents online, digital neighbourhoods, and that allows the public to access information about what's happening in their local area and to access our social media channels. The goal of social media was to ensure that we were able to not only meet their needs, but also do that in an efficient and effective way.
As a police officer, digital transformation for me, we've been able to meet the demands of London, a growing digital city. I've been a police officer for 35 years. I have never worked on any project that has had the same impact in terms of combining technology, innovation, and responding to the needs of the public.
Obrigado, Juan. Ou seja, mais um... Não sei se queres comentar, Juan, um pouco sobre esse caso?
Sí,
Open Bank, Prisma?
I'll switch to English. So like the Metropolitan Police was one of the first success cases that we had in turning around a typical traditional organization that moved to a digital world, an organization that was really behind the users of the consumers, and they moved in a couple of years. They moved and they were one of the flashlights in Europe as examples of digitization of one of the police forces in Europe. And there were many other cases. In interest of time, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but for example, Open Bank, Santander Bank is one of the largest banks in Europe and in the world, and they decided to use an approach that was not to transform themselves, because they were huge organizations, and they found an approach that was much more interesting. That was, let's send speedboats, different new businesses and potential businesses, and let them grow by themselves. And the ones that become real businesses are going to be the ones that would show us the light, and we will start moving the big transatlantic that Santander Bank is in that direction. And in that sense, they created Open Bank, a pure digital bank. And we were working with them. We partnered with them since the inception. And in 10 months, we had a product in the market, starting to compete with traditional banks and growing. It's now in many, many countries, including in Latin America. And it's becoming one of the leading digital banks in the world. We did that, we worked on that. And related to cross-pollination that Alex was mentioning earlier, here we also use that as we use in most of the clients that we work with. In this case, for example, for creating the app or the interface that interacted with consumers, we leverage a bunch of stuff from the gaming industry. Somebody would say, why on earth would you think about like using gaming techniques to a bank platform, to the bank app, when security and risk is so important, and the headquarters are so concerned about those topics. But the idea is that in the gaming industry, consumer engagement, consumer loyalty are so important and so relevant that you could leverage that. If you could leverage that in other industry, it's really powerful. And that's what we did and what we do. And we have another case that Prisma with a video, but I think in interest of time, we will move on.
Let's go. Let's continue.
So how do we think in terms of about digital transformation, and we start by the difference between being digital and seeming digital, and a bunch of these concepts were discussed in the breakout that I was part of a few minutes ago. But we want to differentiate companies that seem digital, that those that are really digital or become digital. Those that seem digital, they set up and it's the analogy of an iceberg. Above the line of the water line, you would have a vision, you know where you want to go. You will start putting together initiatives, business initiatives that are facing the consumer, your employees, internal, that are all visible stuff that you would put in place that would have direct impact in your P&L, in revenue. As somebody said in my group, it's like increasing revenues, decreasing costs. That's basically what we want to achieve. But if you just focus on that, and if you are tempted by all the agencies and players that are in the ecosystem of a traditional companies, you will be tempted of doing a lot of initiatives here and there to do this with consumers, this with employees, probably in a not very connected way. So what is important is to find the connecting dot for all the things you do, and also work on what is below the water. The things that are not visible, that are the ones that would allow you to do those things in a more systematic and strategic way and really become a digital company. And as somebody mentioned, like in the group, it's like the traditional people, process, technologies. Yes, the way we think about that is like there are 5 pillars to really become digital, that are experience, either user experience, customer experience, employee experience, but the design of the experience starting with the centricity of the consumer, user, employee. Technology itself, making sure it's scalable and it can grow and it's adaptable and it can support all the initiatives you want to put in place. data as the center, as the engine that will connect all the dots to do all the things you want to do to transform customer experiences, processes to be more efficient, faster time to market, less complexities. And below all that, the foundation is the culture, or people, culture, the way we work, the way we interact. And this is not just adopting a digital culture. It's like rethinking or adjusting the way we work, the way we operate, the way we experiment, the way we test and learn and make mistakes and learn from the mistakes, the way we collaborate, the way we take decisions at the right level. And it's like changing the way we think. And this is probably the hardest part for more traditional organizations. Let's talk about that topic for a minute. Nacho, you want to take this one?
Can you hear me there?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. In my breakout, I was asking the team, who do you think is the CEO of Internet? Or who do you think is the CEO of Wikipedia? And you may say Google, you may say Microsoft, you may say Apple, but at the end, the CEO of Internet is all of us. The CEO of Wikipedia, which is the largest and the best encyclopedia around the world, even much better than the Britannica, is all of us. If you cut Internet by half, each half will continue growing at the same speed because people are contributing one to the other. When you go to Amazon to buy something, you see all the reports of other people in order for you to be convinced of what to buy. Therefore, our former scheme of thought in terms of we take a decision based on the image of something, now it's people that are contributing to our decisions, and the data is much more democratizado, ¿no? Entonces, estamos pasando de este modelo analógico de mucho control, donde nos gusta tener el control de la situación, a una situación de colaboración y autonomía. Los datos lo que hacen es democratizan las decisiones. Hoy en día muchos clientes nos están pidiendo la democratización de los datos para que haya más accountability. Y a partir de ahí, entonces, los equipos trabajan mucho más ágiles. Entonces, antes se tenía mucho miedo al fracaso. Ahora está permitido el fracaso, nada más que son con equipos ágiles, y donde nosotros le llamamos always in beta. A la decisión y al modelo que se llegó del equipo ágil, se vuelve a cuestionar si lo que se llegó puede ser mejorado. Entonces, constantemente se está tratando de mejorar lo que se hizo. Performance Evaluation, Feedback 360, solo a fin de año. Hoy en día el Feedback 360 es para aprender, para que la persona mejore en el día a día. Es como si yo ahora les tuviese que dar una evaluación de cómo participó Juan en la reunión. Y no es para evaluarlo y para levantar el salario, sino básicamente para que Juan pueda tener un feedback de si presentó bien, mal o no. Top-down leadership, el analógico es por silos. Acá es goal-oriented teams, es across. Mismo el liderazgo. Si yo les pregunto el liderazgo, antes era un liderazgo de control, ahora es un liderazgo de facilitación de que la gente, del employee experience y cómo desarrolla mi gente. Entonces, y tecnología como un standalone unit, donde el líder de tecnología era uno de los más fuertes de la empresa, y hoy es al centro y donde todos contribuyen con la tecnología como parte del negocio. Entonces, desde Globant los ayudamos esto. Para que este hueco, este espacio que parece muy grande sea lo más chico posible y el salto de lo analógico a digital sea corto. Entonces, 3 patas, 3 pilares en la transformación digital: tecnología, disrupción de negocio y cultura. Esto es gran parte de la cultura que desde Globant los ayudamos.
Gracias, Nacho. I'm sorry, and so like thinking about some of the challenges that exist in typically in transformations. And here, these are the ones that we have very present when we start working with our clients. The first one is to make sure we connect the strategic business goals or objectives with the digital opportunities. In a lot of cases, as I mentioned earlier, companies are tempted to do digital stuff because it has to get done. What it's vitally important is to connect with the goals we want to achieve from a business point of view to those opportunities. Second one is to balance the short and long-term needs when prioritizing development initiatives. The idea is we need to have a portfolio of short-term initiatives that would have quick impact in the organization, because that would energize the organization and would help embrace the transformation. Thirdly, align the organization management and cascade from top to down. In a lot of cases, most senior people in the organization, they say that we have to go in this direction, we have to embrace transformation and digital, but they say, but they are not very, very convinced. So the first thing that we have to work on is to make sure that the senior leadership embraces and is convinced that this is the way to go, because otherwise there are very little probabilities of being successful. Fourth, make sure that we connect each initiative with KPIs or KVIs, but specific metrics to make sure that we can track the impact. And the final one is thinking and making sure we always remember that transformation is about change. It's about cultural change. And it impacts every single dimension of decision-making, collaboration, like testing and learning, errors, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that every time we start with in these journeys, we have it on top of our minds, and we have conversations explicitly with our clients about these issues. And the way we think about the transformation, it's a journey. It's hard to think that a few initiatives will get you there. It's more of a journey, it's a mindset, it's cultural, so it takes time. And the way we like to think about it, it's in waves. And you're gonna have more precision and more specificity in the early stages of the transformation. And as soon as you move in the longer term, are things that are be a bit more gray or vague by design, because we don't believe in those roadmaps that are for 3 to 5 years, where you can outline all what you're going to be doing in 3 to 5 years, because industries change so much so quickly that it's really hard to think in specifically in what you're going to be doing in the mid to long term. So the way we think is it's a journey. You have to go step by step. You have to go from a traditional organization that starts defining where you're going to go in digital. Then you put it as a priority. You start defining initiatives that reflects that this is a priority. Then you start embracing the culture and start showing results specifically in the business, in metrics like in revenue and cost. And finally, you adopt it and you move and behave as a digital organization, as the Netflix, the Hulu, the Amazon, and the traditional, the typical digital organizations. And the way we work with companies is we work with them in a, let's say, 2-stage or 2 phases period. One that is the strategic assessment or discovery, as we call it sometimes. And basically it has 3 steps. First, let's understand the starting point. We have some tools, proprietary tools, to map where are we starting and define together, we co-create or co-define the vision. Where are we going to go? what's our digital vision that talks to our business vision, right? Or company vision. Then we go through an ideation process and prioritization. That here we bring all the talent, all the capabilities together from the clients and from our end in coming up with those initiatives that will take us there, that will take us to that vision. And finally, we do the co-creation, that is basically coming up with a roadmap, as I said earlier, like more specific in the early days and a bit more showing the directions in the longer term, and start working and set the stage to start working and crafting those initiatives. And then we go into the second phase, that is more the evolution, the development, the execution of those initiatives, that we partner with companies also in that front, in like bringing all our expertise in user experience, product design, technology, in creating those products that will take us there with a philosophy of continuous evolution or iteration, like quickly getting to the market with the right product, right solution, and start building on top of that and iterating based on the consumer needs, user needs, and their preferences. So that's kind of the way we think, the way we work. Let me pause here because we were like a few minutes behind schedule to see if there are some reflections, questions, or things you guys want to comment or discuss. We know that you guys discuss a lot among yourselves. So we open up for a conversation on this.
Yes, thank you a lot. Very interesting. And then people who started the first question.
I have a question.
Okay.
For me, what's the secret to change the culture? Because I work in a family business that have over than 90 years old. So it's too difficult to change the mindset. What about your, from your experience, what would the main points of execution for having a company in a digital transformation, even being more than 90 years old?
I'll start, but then like guys build on this. There's no secret. Unfortunately, there's no secret. It's like the reality is like if companies don't see and don't identify the need for change, it's going to be really hard to implement change. So what we traditionally do in those situations is make the case for the change. So why? Because a lot of those companies, they would typically say, why would I change? Is that I've been very successful for the last 100 years, 90 years or whatever. So why would I need to change? So it starts from educating and letting them know and explaining how the consumer is changing. That's probably the most eye-opener thing that we use that works. Consumers are always ahead of us, ahead of companies. Even the most evolved companies are behind consumers. They move much faster than us. So if it's a consumer-centric or if the consumer is relevant for the companies, and I'll say it this way because a lot of companies are much more engineer, product, and we make things and then we sell it and somebody will buy it. Typically, the more traditional companies are that way. So like starting to make the case for the change, starting from the need and letting them know in a very, let's say, fact-based, what would happen if I don't start a change process? And for that, there are a lot of techniques, but what I'm trying to say is like, first is education, is letting them know on a fact-based way, what would happen if I don't change? And the second thing is, when we talk about change of transformations, our words that are very heavy, are hard to digest, like because nobody wants to naturally change or transform because it means that something is wrong. So the way to position that is like, it's more about evolution. It's less about changing and transforming. It's like we have to move in that direction. The world goes that way. And if you start positioning that way with the right explanation and making the case, I think they would start moving. And the other thing beyond like letting them know and explaining is showing results. And that's kind of what the way we like to think is from small to big. It's like, if you're working with that company, don't try to change it, like start a big change process. Start with something small. Identify what are the things that would really move the needle, particularly in things that would have impact. P&L, those companies are typically, okay, if we implemented that app and we have more consumers and we sell more, or it works, it has something, or there has to be more on that side. And then they get excited. And that's when I mentioned the challenges like balancing short-term and long-term. It's exactly that. Make sure that you have quick wins, quick results that you can show impact. So if you start making the case, we have to go that way, the world's moving in that direction, and you start doing things that you can start even doing those things like below the radar. They don't even know that you're doing some of those things, but when they are materialized, they have impact, they will get excited, and you will get the right of starting doing more things. And again, don't position it as a transformation, position it as small bets that will put you in the wrong direction for transformation. Like the same thing I mentioned of Open Bank, Santander. Santander said, oh, I'm not going to transform my entire Santander bank that is huge. I will do this like startups, small. If they work, if they grow, if they make profit, and if it's something that it really has a substance, okay, I may start moving in that direction. Otherwise, I won't. So using those things, I think, is the way to do it. But there's no secret. Unfortunately, there's no secret. For some companies, some way of doing that will work better than others.
Y Luis, no, las cosas buenas de tu empresa no hay que tirarlas, hay que fortalecerlas. No es un cambio radical, sino que hay que tratar de tomar las cosas buenas, como dice Juan, buscar quick wins, con pocas cosas para empezar a mostrar a la gente, para que se suba. La gente le gusta subirse al éxito.
Now we have other Katia. You hand your.
Katia. You're on mute.
I was unmuting myself. Now, first of all, I want to thank you for the presentation, for the lecture. It's been very interesting. I do want to. My experience is mostly in consumer goods, throughout my career, and it's very.
Where are you, Katia, today?
Today I'm in Racket. I've been in Procter & Gamble, and I've been in Johnson & Johnson. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is to see how and I have friends in Unilever in different parts, but it's interesting to see how the digital transformation within those big consumer goods corporations is having a lot towards the consumer. So a lot on business to consumer, on content, when it comes to omnichannel, those types of interactions. So very developed on that sense. And at the same time, internally, still a lot of people is slaved behind Excel spreadsheets. So I wanted to hear from you guys, because obviously your sample is much bigger than mine. How are you seeing that transformation happening, not just with the consumers, because everybody with their smartphones want that, but also internally within the companies and within and the processes, and evolving into a more purposeful, meaningful work and everything else?
Yeah, that's a great question. My background is also in consumer. I didn't introduce myself, but I used to work for McKinsey for 9 years. And after that, I work in consumer goods here in Latin America. What I would say is like consumer companies, they typically start with consumers, right? So that's why it's natural for them to start implementing things that are visible for consumers. Like were the first one that embraced digital marketing, let's say in 2000 or around that time. And where's, I would say that even like the big global companies, like the ones that you work at, as like they were tempted or they were tempted to do a bunch of digital things. Like digital agencies or traditional agencies that have a digital arm would come and would say, oh, you have to be in social networks and start doing like social first advertising, then commerce, or you have to create an app, or you have to go direct to consumer. Why would you have a channel, distributors and like point of sales and everything if you can go direct to consumers? And they started to do a lot of different of those things. What I said that they seemed digital because they were doing a bunch of things that but at the beginning they didn't work on the foundations. It's like when you start building a house, they wanted to have the nice curtains and windows and furniture and doors, but they wouldn't think about the plumbing or the foundations of the house. Because consumers don't see the pipes. So why would I spend time on that? And that was something that I work in New York in the early, let's say 2000, 2005 and 10. And those days were like defined by that, doing a lot of different things. At some point, they figured out that they were spending a lot of money. They wouldn't measure the impact of those things that we're doing. And they started to think on those other things like data, processes, technology, how do we work on all the foundation? And I would say that over the last 5-10 years, they are working on that and they are thinking on those things. Although I would also have to say, let me finish with this. Although I would also have to say that it's like a pendulum, right? Like now and over the last 5 years, I would say all consumer companies are thinking on going direct to consumers. Pretty much everybody's working on a marketplace, e-commerce, and all those things because they think that it's cool or it's profitable or it's a smart move to bypass distributors and wholesalers and all the in-between chain. The reality is going to be like somewhere in between. The pendulum will come back at some point because there are issues like drop size not efficient, high logistic cost, like all the things that distributors deal with that consumer companies don't know how to do that because they don't know to do the last mile. They don't know like how to reach directly the consumer. They don't have the assortment required. That's why retailers are important because they have an assortment that each consumer CPG company doesn't have. So my point of view is like they are now all going, try to get direct to consumers. Consumers are not going to buy from 10 different CPG companies. They're going to buy from one. So the one that can centralize everything or can create a marketplace or become a digital retailer, if it goes that way, is the one that's going to win. But at some point, a lot of them are going to go back and they will realize that consumers are not going to be buying from like 10, 15 different CPG companies. So I think that's kind of like what's happening now. A lot of you guys are still trying to figure out if it's worth or not going to direct to consumer. In a lot of cases, it is, but in a lot of cases, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And we're working with a lot of you guys in trying to figure that out because there are economic things that have to happen, as I said, like drop size, logistic costs, like minimum orders and all those type of things that need to be taken into account from a consumer point of view, from the operations point of view, and the entire value chain. Nacho, you would say something.
No, also to complement to the question of Katia, one of the things that que las empresas y los líderes último trabajan es la cultura interna de la compañía. Porque la cultura es algo intangible. La cultura no se ve. Es difícil de cambiar y a su vez no hay objetivos de cultura. Hay objetivos de revenue, hay objetivos de costos, pero objetivos de cultura, de colaboración, de mejoramiento de clima, no van en función del bono de fin de año. Entonces, lo que yo creo es que el aspecto cultural es tan importante como el aspecto de tecnología o el aspecto de negocio que hablaba Juan. Entonces, yo lo que creo es que la cultura, una transformación donde no se tenga en cuenta lo que tú dices del Excel y eso, no es una transformación completa y es una transformación que se queda en el medio.
Thank you. Marcelo, your question, please.
Hi, Juan. Hopefully you can hear me, right? Yeah,
Yes.
seems
Yes.
you can. Good. Congrats a lot for the presentation. Very clear.
Thank you.
I kind of lead this transformation in a very old culture industry. So like a manufacturing type of culture. I work for Whirlpool, and you presented a very good slide about the waves, right? And in companies like this, home appliance, automobile, this more manufacturing mechanical culture type of culture from the past, where you see they are positioned in those waves, right? Because depending on the company we're in, we have good use cases, we have some good even like fast boats. I don't know how you're mentioning Santander is doing, right?
Yes.
Speedboat. We all have some agile scrum teams inside, but where most of these old-fashioned industries are in your view, because you probably have a lot of clients, and it's, in my view, it's probably a little bit different from a service, a more different industries. They might be in a different place. These more old-fashioned ones, where they are.
It varies, but in general, I would say that most of them are in the early stages of becoming a digital company. Examples. We have a lot of data. We've been gathering data for the last 2 years, so we have a lot of data. We don't use it. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to access it. We don't have it structured in the right way. People are not used to make decisions based on data that speaks for itself. We crunch a lot of Excel to try to get some insights from data. So that's very typical, and that's, I would say, like 90% of companies are still there. That's one example. Processes. No, we are working on, like, we implemented some robots, RPA, for some process to automate some processes. We did that for this process. But in general, 95% of our processes are really cumbersome. We don't know where things are stuck. We have some digitation, but in general, you have like the digital invoice or the digital purchase order, but before and after that is all a mess that you know where it goes and you get lost there. So there are some good intentions, there are some initial efforts, but it's still a long way to go. If the CEO, when the CEO, either you have a new CEO, like in the case of Reckitt, that you guys changed the CEO like lately, or when somebody with a new approach comes that brings the need for change, things move a bit faster. Otherwise, there are more, what we see is that there are more like spastic efforts along the entire organizations. And there may be some areas that are a bit advanced, but some more, others not. So it's not consistent either.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.
There may be exceptions. I'm saying like 90% of what we see, right?
Our last
Yeah,
question.
we are right there. Thank you.
Alan?
Yes, I would like to come back on the culture of the company. I was looking at your footprint. And how do you deal with this when you put a guy from India working for a guy from Argentina? How do you deal with this? Because, for example, at Renault, where I was working, it's not necessarily easy. Sometimes you have to train the people. And a $1 million question. Do you have a worldwide Globant culture? But maybe there is no answer. I'm really interesting is how do you deal with the different cultures?
And I refer to Nacho as well, but I would say shortly we're going to be releasing a book that is about Globant culture. Because there's no way to grow. Imagine when I joined Globant, that was 2 years ago, we were 9,000 employees. Nacho joined at that time, roughly. Mm-hmm. Now there are like 17,000. So if you don't have a strong culture that could quickly embrace and you get sucked by the culture and you get in there, it's impossible to survive. We wouldn't be able to grow in terms of employees, performance, revenue, profit, and stock price. Like Nacho was saying, when we became public in the New York Stock Exchange in 2014, the stock price was $10. Today it's 220. Right. So if you don't have a strong culture, that doesn't happen. And there are like 5 or 6 factors. I'm not like the most capable for these, but there are some factors that are very clear for our culture and expectations for each Glober. It's like test and learn, like culture based on mistakes and learning from the mistakes. It is not bad to make mistakes, and we see it like in every single dimension. Today I received an email from Globant, like the typical things that you get, like the internal email, right? Like, oh, there's this like activity or conference or something. Click here and it will go to your calendar. And it wouldn't even say when and or what time was the meeting or the event in the invitation. And I click in the bottom to put in the calendar. What happened? It didn't work. That would somebody say something about that? Probably the newest one, like me, like I've been here for 2 years, I still get a bit frustrated for some of those things, but it's kind of normal. So the guy that did it is like, oh, adjust it, and then they send it again. And it's like, of course, if he does it like 25 times, okay, that's not the way to make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. But it's like, it's very natural, it's very normal. And some of the values that we say we have, we really live those values. And there are like 5 or 6 dimensions, like the pod or the how do you say, like the teams with professionals from different studios that are facing and working with the clients. That's the real unit for us. That's those are the bosses. Multifunctional. And we have a multifunctional, yeah. And the rest of the organization is behind those teams and making sure those teams are successful. And if we have somebody in those teams that joined a month ago and it's a bit weak, the rest of the team will embrace and will make him successful or her successful. And the rest of the studios will put somebody to support a person to make sure he's successful in the first engagement, second engagement, and understands what to do. So that after 1 or 2 engagements, he's ready or she's ready, like to go and be a Glober. So it's really.
Let me complement, Juan, what you are saying, and to answer Alain also. If you remember in Renault and in many companies here, if you go to Whirlpool, if you go to Volvo, we are coming from a culture of control, of results. It's very difficult to leave control out. We want to control because it's the way we manage, or we were accustomed to manage. Order and security. So things that I can keep my area of control and security in order to bring results. What is happening today and what culture in Globant is? It's a culture of purpose, and people, new generations are looking for a purpose. We are going to the purpose of sustainability, of diversity. We have a Be Kind called, where we try to respect gender, where we try to respect the planet, where we try to respect others. That's the Be Kind. So purpose. Second is innovation. This always in beta, putting price on the skills that people constantly in the innovation, you constantly learn. So you need new skills in order to be adapted to the new reality. Flexibility is how I can be flexible to work, even me as a managing director, in a team with an assistant. It's not about the position, it's based on the skills each person has. So basically, suddenly, you blow your brains based on the control, because now you will not have any control. If you ask Juan or Alex, if you have any control in Globant, you will say no. We are part of something where we are part of contributing to a place, to someone else. So control is something, it's we have to a little bit begin to leave it aside, no?
Silvana, eu sei que nós estamos já no final, queria apenas, sei que você vai dar uma encerrada, queria apenas fazer um único comentário. Primeiro, essas dores, esses problemas, essas questões, elas estão presentes em todas e grandes empresas. Nós não estamos sós, vocês não estão sós. Isto está no dia a dia, nós enfrentamos isso em todos os setores. Então, não podemos ter vergonha de pedir ajuda, isso está muito claro. Então, isso que nós apresentamos para vocês está disponível aqui no Brasil, somos mais ou menos 1.000 pessoas aqui no Brasil, com 4 escritórios. Silvana, se você puder e alguém quiser entrar em contato conosco, eu sou o responsável pelas operações brasileiras, eu passo meus dados para você. E, qualquer momento, aprofundar sobre os seus problemas relativos ao seu negócio, desenhar estratégias, desenhar iniciativas digitais, transformações culturais, estamos absolutamente disponíveis. 2, Nacho e Juan certamente estarão conosco, são fundamentais nessa jornada. Então, agradecemos em nome da Globant do tempo dedicado a nós. Muito obrigado.